Hello, I am a teacher of deaf and hard of hearing, and I want to give you some background information about the student you will see in this video. His name is Luke. He is profoundly deaf in both ears. On his right side, he has a cochlear implant. On his left side, he wears a hearing aid. Growing up, he used both a cued language transliterator and an American Sign Language interpreter. He is now a junior in high school, so he has different challenges now. He is mainstream for his complete school day, except for one class where he's with me, his deaf and hard of hearing teacher. Luke has noticed that he struggles with attending to two different visual information sources. Like if he has to watch both the interpreter and a video without captions, or an interpreter and captioning simultaneously, or trying to take notes in class. That can be challenging. This video will show an IEP team identifying the issues and discussing solutions, and also how to use the discussion guide to help the team to figure out what is best for Luke. Finally, we will talk about his transition to college. What does he need? What kind of information does he need to consider for transition? Also, notice that in the IEP meeting, there is no additional interpreter. Typically, in many schools, the interpreter during the day will meet with the deaf and hard of hearing teacher in advance to pass on insight or to share with the team while the interpreter is interpreting the meeting. So make sure the interpreter's feedback is collected before the IEP meeting. For this video, our priorities are problem solving and preparing for the future.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to our meeting today with Luke. We want to talk about some of the specifics related to access. But first, I think it might be worthwhile just going around and introducing ourselves. I'm Ann Mays. I'm a deaf and hard of hearing teacher with Luke. And this is my name sign. I'm Luke. My name sign is this.
Hello, I'm Mary, Luke's mother.
I'm Mrs. Paulson. I'm the social studies teacher.
I'm Dr. Lane-Outlaw. I'm the administrator here.
Okay, thanks. I think we'll just go ahead with the meeting. Luke, what did you call us here? Yeah, I know I'm doing well in most of my classes, but in social studies, there's a lot of videos, and I notice I'm missing some of the material. I do have an interpreter, but I feel like I'm missing some of the information because the videos aren't captioned. And then in my college level English class, the teacher talks so fast. It's really a challenge for me to watch the interpreter, try to take notes, and do it all at the same time. I think it would be helpful to have a note taker. And then I could compare my notes with theirs to help me understand the information better. It would also allow me to watch the interpreter better and look at the notes later. So I know taking notes is hard while you're trying to watch an interpreter and videos, and with the note taker probably would be helpful. Also, I noticed your English teacher says he notices you struggled first semester. I know it's a fast-paced class. Can you tell me some more specifics about social studies? Tell us more about social studies.
Well, I apologize, Luke. I found out that you'd be part of our class at the very beginning of this semester. And just because of the way social studies is, we study a lot of current events and depend on YouTube for captioning. That hasn't worked very well. So I've been struggling really to find captioned films for current events. But this next semester, I know that you'll be with us, and I'm all set up and ready to go.
Yeah, we really encourage Luke to stand up for himself and to talk to teachers directly, and he's really trying to figure out the best way to do that. And I think he prefers to send emails if that works.
Absolutely.
Well, and I've heard he's a really hard worker. I mean, the teachers enjoy having him, but I do know that access has been a challenge. So we are working on that. We want to make sure we have all the access that Luke needs.
I think it would be good to look at our discussion guide and make sure that we've covered everything. There's some prompts and some checklists here. So I'm going to pass those out. And if you could take a moment to look at page 19, specifically the part about high school students. If you notice, this discussion guide talks about different situations, like you've experienced the same kind of thing. It talks about using interpreters and having other kinds of assistance, specifically for fast-paced classes. So I'm trying to remember, that we're going to college soon, and we want you to be ready for that experience. Have you talked to your VR counselor yet, the vocational rehab counselor? There's a page here for them. Yeah, I've emailed my VR counselor, and they weren't able to come. But we do have another meeting set up later on. In reading this guide, I feel like I'd be able to explain my hearing loss and how that affects me in school. But I really like to be independent. Even though I know I miss things. I don't ever remember the specific numbers. Right, you are very independent, but it is important to know some of the data because other people don't always understand the impact of a hearing loss. Remember the audiologist tested your hearing, and I think they said you catch about 20%. Means that you miss 80%. So I know if you use your processor and your hearing aids, you can hear some, but when your eyes aren't on the speaker, you'll miss some. So it's important to consider that kind of phrasing to help people understand how much you miss if you're taking notes or watching the interpreter. And I think as you take the more and more advanced classes, it's going to be more and more difficult to note take and look at the board and watch the interpreter all at the same time.
If I remember right, there was a trial with some voice recognition software. I know the tech gentleman, he and I had talked about, he was downloading that on a laptop. How did that work?
Well, it was really distracting. And a lot of words were messed up. Especially those vocabulary words that I was missing already. It didn't work for me.
I noticed when you had a note taker that was a paraprofessional in the classroom for other students that you seemed to do better with that. Whatever happened with that?
Yes, I can focus better on the teacher instead of taking my own notes from the board. It allows me just to relax a little bit more, focus on the interpreter, knowing that somebody else is taking notes. And then that information lines up better with the study guide than with what the teacher's written on the board. And I can then study better with the notes. So to summarize, it sounds like a note taker would be helpful. Voice recognition software was not helpful. And the accuracy of the voice recognition software was not there, and it was also a distraction to you. So I'm wondering if you think it would be important as you go through your college prep classes to do maybe a trial with CART or C-Print or something like that. Or have you done that already? I think you've tried CART, as I remember. Also, it would be important for you to say, like you say you like to do things independently. When you move into the dorm, we have to think about the fire alarms, how you're going to wake up. We need to think about those kind of things as you go into college. Do you want to try CART again? I think you've tried it before. Or you want to try it again?
Can I just, what is CART? And does that replace an interpreter? What does that look like?
CART is when someone types word for word what everyone is saying. I've tried CART last spring on a trial basis with some other deaf students, but I wasn't sure about not having the interpreter in class. CPRINT is similar to that, but it's not a word-for-word transcription. It's more of a summary, whereas CART is more accurate. I think I'd probably need CART in my AP European History class. So, you're right, that's a good question. Does that supplant the interpreter or enhance the interpreter? That's something we have to think about. We were thinking about using CART only in class for a heavy lecture class. I know you're going to have a variety of classes. Some will be better suited to an interpreter, some might be better suited to CART. Like the AP European History, I think that's going to be heavy on the lecture and the vocabulary, so that might be a good place to use CART. Why don't we sit down and make up a plan and save that for later? What do you think?
So that sounds good. Are you guys going to, where are you going to save this information? How are you going to remember to use it?
Ann Mays and I, we're going to be starting to create a portfolio for me on Google Drive. And that'll include things like sample emails, sample letters.
Okay.
Because when we go to college, it's important to have that kind of information at your fingertips at the ready. So we can store a variety of things like that. When you apply to a college, there might be similar things they're requesting, so you can have a form ready done and just tweak it a little bit according to each application. We also want to make sure you're up to speed on ADA. If you look at page 20, no wait, is it page 20? Oh no wait, I'm thinking, Mira, I'm thinking about something else. I'm thinking about Appendix 6 on page 47. Look at that for a minute. It's towards the end. If you read through that, you notice there's different areas that the checklist includes. We can kind of use this as a guide and create the portfolio along these lines. And starting in the fall, we can include ADA information, things about Title II of the ADA, all kinds of things that will be important in college. Because in college, there is no IEP. You need to know your rights and you need to know how to be able to advocate for yourself, to help people understand what your hearing loss is and how ADA applies to your rights. But going back to page 20, page 20 talks about the impact of, if you only understand 20%, how that impacts, how you might want to use CART in some classes and note-taking in some classes. That explains clearly all the different things you might want to cover, all the different areas of consideration as you develop your portfolio. The kinds of things to prioritize, the kinds of things to include. So it's important. There's a website for PepNet. A lot of resources, even though PepNet itself is no longer functioning, but they still have some resources online you might want to look at. See how it goes. That sounds like a good plan. I'm really looking forward to college. I know my mom and dad really want me to have that experience with the support. And I think I can do that and have the language to tell people what I need to be successful. Thank you all for coming.